but it's also the first snow, so we have to freak out. So anyway, thank you for coming out today. We are so excited. We have 5 books that came out this year in 2025, which brings us to 65 books published by Fifth Avenue Press since 2017. Yeah, we're extremely excited. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get started. We're starting with one of our first picture books, Rugged Racks, The Little Satellite That Could by Suzanne Jacobs Lipshaw. I'm going to let Suzanne tell you the story of this book, but just to give you a peek into it before she does her presentation. Imagine you're a part of an engineering team tasked with designing and building a mini but mighty satellite, a CubeSat named RAX. Your CubeSat's mission? Gather space weather data to help scientists prevent massive blackouts caused by solar storms. This team failed during its first attempt. Will it succeed this time? Rugged Racks is the true story of a CubeSat RAX and is packed with a payload of space science and engineering for STEM enthusiasts. Please give a warm welcome to Suzanne Jacobs Lipshaw. The easy way is to just go.
So I got it right in front of me.
Yeah.
I don't even need the book, probably. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you all for coming out, as Erin said, on this snowy, kind of crappy weather day. This has been a long journey for me. It's actually the first book that I started writing back in 2017, and I had 3 books published prior to this one actually coming out, and I really thank Fifth Avenue Press for championing it and being such a joy to work with. So let's go on. I'm going to read The Rugged Racks, The Little Satellite That Could. Written by me, Suzanne Jacobs Lipshaw, and the illustrator is Mesa Shoemaker. She did an amazing job. This is a piece of nonfiction, and it's written in a really fun way, but it is about a actual satellite, so you can imagine how technical it was and what kind of job she had to be able to portray all that accurately. All right, I think I'm going to read from here because my eyes aren't so good to read it on the screen. I'm going to start with the author's note because it'll just give you some background about the book. My son Josh, while a junior at the University of Michigan, introduced me to CubeSats when he joined the Michigan Exploration Laboratory, MXL, in 2013. During his 2 years there, the MXL team designed, built, and tested their 4th, 5th, and 6th CubeSats, MCube-2, Griffiths, and Cadre, MQ-2 and Griffiths had successful missions, but Cadre had a failure. Cadre's antenna became trapped underneath the solar panel that didn't move to its correct position. This flaw meant the satellite couldn't communicate with the lab. Failure is difficult, but dedicated scientists and engineers know failure is an important part of their process. Most new discoveries are made by making mistakes, analyzing errors, and applying lessons learned on future projects. When Josh graduated, he took the lessons he learned from both successful and failed MXL missions with him to Lockheed Martin Space, where he is a space systems engineer. At Lockheed Martin, Josh was part of a team that designed and launched several GPS satellites. Currently, he is working on sending the next generation of astronauts back to the moon. By designing spacecraft that explore Earth and beyond, engineers and scientists like Josh help us learn more about our planet and continually invent new products that enrich our lives. My hope is that the story of the engineering team that created RAX will inspire you to become a problem solver. From there, you can use your skills to positively affect our lives on Earth and maybe even one day on a planet far, far away. Look to the sky. A storm cloud rages. Rain splashes, lightning flashes, thunder roars, wind soars. Lights flicker, TV fizzles, the internet flops, streets go dark. On the sun, a different storm rages. Superheated gases crash. Spurts of energy flash. Solar winds roar. Some soar 1,000,000 miles per hour all the way to Earth. Darkness covers the city, state, and country. It even covers the continent. People wonder, what happened? Space weather happened. Solar storms are rare, but they happen. People need to be prepared. Enter a team of student engineers. Their mission? To create a small spacecraft to circle Earth and gather space weather data. What if you were part of that team? Awesome, but this is the same team where the first space weather spacecraft failed. Will they learn from their mistakes? The team pushes up their sleeves. Again, they plan. They problem solve. They design another mini but mighty satellite, another CubeSat. The team starts with a metal frame. They shape it into a cube small enough to sit in the palm of one hand. But how can they squeeze in all the parts their satellite needs to run? Can a CubeSat be another shape? The team measures. They tinker. They measure some more. Another metal frame is built. It's shaped into a rectangle the size of a loaf of bread. Hooray! Everything fits! The team names their CubeSat RAX. Like a computer, RAX needs power to operate. But how will they get power into space? An extension cord? No, there isn't one long enough to reach outer space. A cell phone charger? Nope, that would need an extension cord too. Gasoline? No go. There are no gas station pumps in space. The sun? Yes, the sun is a ball of energy, and with energy comes power. The team fastens solar panels to racks. This will soak up power from the sun. Next, RAX needs to talk to the team. But how? Cell phone? There are no cell phone towers in space to carry the signal. Email? Nope. RAX is unmanned, so there's no one to type. Snail mail? Negative. Too slow. And you can't drive a delivery truck in space. What about code? Yes, computer code will allow the team to talk to RAX. The team designs, builds, and wires a computer. They construct, tweak, and attach 4 antennas. Now RAX can talk with blips and bleeps. But there's still another problem to solve. How will RAX get into space? Balloons? Nope, they pop too easily. Airplane? Nope, planes need air for lift, and there's no air in space. Carrier pigeon? Yuck, no bird poop on RAX, please. Could RAX hitch a ride? Yes, RAX can use rockets, but traveling by rocket is dangerous. Fierce, fiery blasts, violent shocks, blazing heat. Is RAX really ready to face these perils? The team paces and ponders. If RAX fails again, it's back to the drawing board. Maybe RAX should practice first. RAX goes to another lab for 3 tests: shake, shock, and bake. First, lab workers lift RAX onto a table that jolts, jiggles, and jerks like a rocket blasting off the launch pad. Phew! RAX is shook, but still in one piece. But can RAX hold up during an explosion? RAX is placed on a metal plate with gunpowder. The lab workers light a fuse and bang! Hooray! RAX survives the violent surge. The final test. Can RAX withstand the sun's baking heat? Lab workers toast RAX like a marshmallow in a tunnel-like oven. Hot stuff. RAX passes the test without even breaking a sweat. Next stop, the launch site. RAX is wheeled into a clean room. The team must wear head-to-toe bunny suits to keep goop, gunk, and grime away from the spacecrafts. Workers put RAX inside a metal box to keep it safe. The box is packed in the rocket's nose cone. 4 other CubeSats and a large NASA satellite are also hitching a ride. In the control room, the launch team performs the final systems check. The countdown begins. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff! The rocket blasts into space. The bottom section falls away. The top section continues to soar, and then the satellites deploy. Everyone's heart races. Is Rax going to succeed this time? NASA's satellite goes first. Another team's CubeSat second. Finally, it's go time. The metal box holding Rax opens. A spring catapults it into the orbit like lava from an erupting volcano. After 45 minutes in orbit, Rax's solar panels shine as they charge from the sun's light. Its power supply activates. Its antennas deploy. The team waits for Rax to send its first message. Blip! The team hoots, hollers, and cheers. Their smiles are glowing as bright as Rax's solar panels. Time to tell Rax to begin its space weather experiments. Rax's computer fires bleeps into space. Those bleeps bounce off the sparks of energy spurting from the sun. Rax photographs the specks and sends the images to the team. Congratulations, mission accomplished. Rax has collected data for 18 months and has performed 1,756 experiments. Its measurements have helped scientists predict space weather and prevent massive blackouts. In time, Rax plunges back toward Earth. It burns up as it re-enters our atmosphere. But don't worry. Instead, look to the sky. Maybe you will see other mini but mighty satellites. Thank you all for coming. Truly appreciate it. And I'll be upstairs if anyone ever has any questions.
I want to make a point of saying, so Dr. Cutler, who was the head of the lab where this happened on North Campus, came in today and bought a huge stack and was extremely excited because he finally got to see, and I'm sorry to spoil, I think this is a good story. His wife, who's a 4th grade teacher, was like, now your mother will finally understand what you do. Because as we know, children's books always distill things in ways that make it a little bit easier to get a hardcore concept. So we're really excited about this one. The illustrator actually lives in Mauritius right now. She was amazing. She actually is originally from Seattle, but we were very lucky to find somebody who could really take all those science concepts. And as you can see, there's a whole lot more data in all those sidebars to enjoy. Okay, so our next book is our other picture book that came out this year, The Story of the First Popsicle by Ariel Ojibwe. Did you ever wonder who made the first popsicles? Or if your ancestors made snow cones with maple syrup? Me too. I guess we'll never know who made the first frozen treat because the evidence was eaten long ago. But it's always fun to imagine new stories. Wabooz has a brand new idea for a delicious treat, but will everything turn out as he hoped? Travel with him through the lands where the pawpaws grow in search of the perfect fruit. Please welcome Ariel Ojibwe. So we just need to push the arrow to move through.
Okay, thank you. Miigwech, Ani, hello, bonjour. My name is Ariel Ojibwe, Indigenous, sorry. And I wrote the story of the first popsicle, and another author said that Erin and the team were book doulas, and it's true. They birthed this book into the world and into life. And I wrote this book for my little cousins because I was so lucky to have a wonderful family and lots of aunts around me to tell me stories and to teach me about the personhood of animals and maple sugar story and give me a little bit of Anishinaabemowin sprinkling at the Nokama Center. Didn't really sink in, but I got a few words. And my little cousins are spread out around. And so I wrote a little story thinking it would be our little story. And then I just thought, why not? Why not? The Ann Arbor Press is right here, Fifth Avenue. I'll just try it. And they made it happen. And they hired an amazing illustrator. Steph B did this artistry. So I am going to read you the story of the first popsicle. Oh, haha. And I'm also going to read from the book because I also have eyeballs that need strong contacts. Oh, that Wabooz, just like his sassy uncle. Am I right? All of Nanabuzu's nibblings, always out there making trouble. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yes, the story of the first popsicle. It was the first snow of the year. A freak blizzard in September, and this little nibbling was out there doing just what his mother told him not to do, playing over cold water in freezing temperatures. Why? Because this was just what his tricky uncle loved, anything his mom told him not to do. Wabooz was quick-footed, like his namesake. Oh, I'm not good at this. Wabooz was quick-footed, like his namesake, and he loved to play a game where he followed an animal's footprints through the snow for as long as he could, no matter where it led him. He'd found some excellent hideouts that way, and once almost gotten stuck in a log, which he counted as a great adventure. And this one. Today, Wabooz was following a deer's tracks into a very deep part of the forest. He didn't remember coming here ever before. The trees tipped this way and that, leaning on each other for support. The ground was spongy and sometimes made bogut noises, so he knew he was going into a mishkig. The deer tracks, so clear in the deep snow, sprung high on top of a log toppled like a bridge. They led over a tiny creek, then pranced down again and continued hopping from tree trunk to fallen tree trunk. Was the deer playing a game too? Wabooz liked to, if possible, not disturb anything as he went. As he vaulted up on the snow-covered trunk, he arched his back and shuffled sideways to avoid disturbing a sagging white cedar limb brought low with snow. He was almost around the glittering branch, nose to nose with a giant puffball of snow, when he was suddenly surged by the He was suddenly seized by the urge to bite it. It was so satisfying to take a huge chomp like that, and the snow was just wet enough so that it compacted a little when he bit down instead of melting immediately. What a fabulous new game! Every dangling bulb in his path, glump, he took a bite. Wabooz was now tucked far into a tunnel of brambles when he saw another perfect puff of snow held aloft by a shrubby little bush. He scurried over for his next bite. Jump! Only this time, he hit something unexpectedly juicy, and his eyes lit up. Some squirrels had been watching from a nearby tree, and they shook their heads pityingly. It's like the kids never had a blueberry before, they said despairingly. You gotta teach these two-leggers everything. Hey, remember how many times we had to show them about the maple sap? Oh yeah, poor things. They're just not very bright. But Wabooz had, of course, eaten a blueberry before. What he hadn't had was a frozen one covered in snow. It gave him an idea. Wabooz, you see, was actually a very clever boy, despite his penchant for doing dangerous things his mother would frown on. He ran home to get busy at once. First, he found his mother and explained his plan. She gave him all the tools that he asked for, but told him that no matter what came of his idea, he couldn't waste any of it. Oh, man. Sorry, everybody. Where am I? Did I do it? Yes. Next, he ran to a place resplendent with log ferns in the summer, where the smooth dunes cascaded into the wet forest. There were some prolific pawpaws there. Although it was just past pawpaw season, not by much, there really shouldn't have been snow yet during the leaves-turning moon, so Wabooz felt sure he could find what he needed. He scoured the ground beneath the middling-sized trees whose thin yellow leaves were blanketed in snow. He dusted off each likely-looking snowy bump, hoping to find a fruit. What he found was a lot of muddy, leafy bumps. But Waboos was not a boy to be deterred by digging through some muck. In fact, you probably know him well enough by now to realize that he thought this was fun. Rummaging through the fallen leaves and twigs, he finally found the perfect, gnarly-looking lump and snatched it up with haste, yelling his thanks as he ran. By the time he got home, daylight was dwindling. Waboos set the wetted and water-filled wigwasi macaque his mother gave him onto the cooking coals, plopping in old, hardened chunks of maple sugar. His mother wasn't about to give him the good stuff for this. I'm sorry, it's sticky. Next, he cleaned off his hands very well, just like the Essabanog do. He washed, then peeled the pawpaw and squished up the soft fruit with his hands, carefully setting aside the seeds. Later, he would take the seeds to his favorite spots in the woods and plant them. While he waited for the water to boil and melt the maple sugar, he dug several indentations in the snow and lined them with birch roll. After that, he came back to the wigwasi macaque and added the squished up pawpaw. He took the container off the coals and mixed everything with a wooden spoon. It looked like Jikonaye's ziganabu, but it smelled much sweeter. It was ready. Waboos carried the container to each of the snow depressions. Yes, he did. Pouring a little of the mixture into each palm-sized birch cup. He covered it all up with snow and completed the job by licking out all the sticky sweetness left in the big container. Just to be sure his creation would turn out how he wanted, Waboos left the mixture alone all night to cool. He was so excited, he almost couldn't sleep. By morning, pretty much everyone knew about Waboos's weird naboob. His sisters and brothers, his cousins and aunties, his uncles, Nokomis, and Mom all gathered around for the big unveiling. Waboos thanked Creator for all the many gifts he'd received, including this brilliant idea. He got several teasing pokes for this. And then he went out to discover just how his experiment turned out. Alas and alack, the squirrels had gotten there first. However, they'd only taken their fair share, and the squirrel-sized portion is very small. Waboos picked up an untouched cup, and everyone watched as he peeled back the paper. He sniffed it, and everyone held their breath, waiting. Waboos took a bite. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. It was delicious. A brand new treat, and he had created it. The very first popsicle. He cheered, and so did his family. Then Waboos passed the goodness around. The end! Thank you, everybody. Miguel!
And I'm sure you noticed, but there is awesome information about pawpaws. There's a recipe for making your own popsicle, and then information and a little glossary about the Anishinaabe, and then the Anishinaabe-Moan words. So lots of good follow-up information. All right, so those were our two picture books. We are now moving on to the first memoir that we're going to be celebrating today. Running Around Town by Stephen Postma. This collection of essays shares the observations of an energetic boy living in anything but simple time, the mercurial decades of the 60s and 70s in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Running Around Town brings funny and quirky insights into gentle focus with a lens on the small things in life that bring purpose and make us human. Our perennially curious narrator describes his small but teeming domain extending to the University of Michigan Diag and the people who influenced him. A cashier who sells him a peace sign necklace at Middle Earth, the clerks at Discount Records who provide musical advice, the folk musicians at the Ark, U of M basketball star Cassie Russell, and importantly, a policeman neighbor who bails him out of situational predicaments, and a classmate bibliophile who teaches him to sing in tune and passes him a note in a history class at Pioneer High School. Part coming-of-age impressions, part family and societal portraits in miniature, part love story, Running Around Town is ultimately a tapestry of transformative everyday interactions woven together with the cultural influence and music of the times. Please welcome Stephen Postema.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. How many of you lived in Ann Arbor in the 1960s? 1960s. Okay. So, is she here? So she doesn't count. So I only have 2 fact checkers, so I can say whatever I want. How about the 70s? Okay. All right. Well, it was quite a place. I've told people I'm not that interesting of a person, but the times were very interesting, and I had a very good memory. So this is really about connections that you have in life, people who influenced you that at the time you didn't realize it, smaller things. It's 37 essays. They're about 5 to 6 pages each. So it's easy to read. It's simple, but not simplistic. And so I'm going to read a little bit. It will be different than the readings you had. I have no pictures. But I also, it's meaningful to be at the library. I loved the library. And in fact, was so obsessed by the library that at an early age wanted to figure out a way to have additional library cards in false names so that I could take out more than the 7 books allotted at the library. So a lot of my youth was how many books could I get out of the library, and it led to theft, schemes, and other things. But I returned all the books. So with that, I'll read a little bit about from chapter 1. The year away, and I had prefaced this with running. People asked, well, why did you run so much? And I ran initially out of fear, and then I was super competitive, so I raced, and then finally it was a way to see my town. So this is from chapter 1, the year away. Running was second nature to me, and frankly, it arose out of fear. While our new neighborhood, over by Dickens School off Scioto Church Road, seemed child-friendly and safe, I was disturbed for several years when I was young. Many houses in our subdivision on Covington had signs depicting blue helping hands. It was about this size. It had disembodied blue hands. Okay, as explained to me in kindergarten in 1964, these houses were places of refuge for kids who encountered trouble away from their own homes. Okay, I'll confess, I wasn't listening very well then, a perennial problem, and I believed that houses with these signs were themselves places of danger, and I ran past each of them, and there were so many of them, I kept going. Finally, I was instructed again that these were good houses that would take you in. We were in a safe neighborhood, don't worry about this, my mother said, but I was a suspicious child, and because there were so many of these signs, I wondered why there were so many signs, so I assumed that this area was a magnet for predators or other bad actors. Or why would we need so many places of refuge? Now, plus the hands themselves, they were creepy, I gotta tell you. But by then, I was in the habit of running everywhere, up to Dickens School, to the parks, everywhere. And this running proved useful when we moved to California, so my father could have a sabbatical year in 1969-70. Yeah, note those nights. 2 nights into the trip, in June 1969, my father called back to Ann Arbor, found out the city was in the midst of the biggest student protest it had ever seen. 4 nights, right here, South University and State Street. As we headed down the highway, my mother worried about the chaos in Ann Arbor and wondered aloud whether the coming years, 69, 70, Berkeley would be a little more peaceful than Ann Arbor. Now, we arrived in Berkeley 2 months later. Yes, we took a 5,000-mile detour to Cuernavaca, Mexico. With no housing lined up, my father had forgotten to get us housing. We had a pop-up camper that we were living on a busy street near the Diag of Berkeley, in a parking lot converted to temporary camping for people living on the streets. This was not ideal for a family with 4 children under 10 and a pop-up camper. And I slept, it was so frightening, I slept with a large hunting knife under my pillow that I bought for our trip. Now, daylight in Berkeley in the age of Aquarius was also not ideal, I'll tell you that. When I went to get my mom a newspaper that morning that I got up, the newspaper reported that there was someone called the Zodiac serial killer on the loose in the Bay Area, and the paper also further detailed the crazed Charles Manson cult in Southern California that was at large and was moving northward to the Bay Area. I debated whether to tell my mom that they were simply out of papers, as I knew my mom would not take this news very well, particularly because the little lock on our camper door was now broken. But I handed the paper over and watched her absorb this information, and amazingly, they found a house that afternoon at the edge of Berkeley in Richmond, California. But before school each day, my older brother reminded me that the Zodiac man might be in the neighborhood that day, and so I ran to school. Parents, despite this, did not walk their children to school. You were on your own. The first week of school in Richmond, California, at 10 years old and in 5th grade, I found myself surrounded on the way home by a group of kids who demanded to know why I was in their territory and where I was from. So I did what many people in Michigan would do. I raised my right hand with the fingers close together so it looked like the state of Michigan. I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan, I said, as I pointed the approximate location of Ann Arbor on this right-hand map. Now, a little context for them about this map might have worked a little better. The group looked puzzled, and in hindsight, my repeated jabbing of my finger into my hand may have been taken as some sort of gesture of disrespect or a Michigan gang symbol. They took offense, derision followed, then hostility. I told them I came from a peace-loving finger, and I showed them my silver peace sign necklace on my middle finger, and this just seemed to make matters worse. One pulled a knife and demanded the ring. I'll take that ring, and I'll take your finger. Now I fled, and I found that all my years of running had prepared me very well for this exact moment. But all I could remember thinking as I ran home to our new house in not a safe area was why? Why were there no blue helping hands here in this state of California? So that, so that's from chapter 1, and it's been really fun to describe what it was like to live in Ann Arbor during the 60s and 70s, and it's been really fun to now correspond with people really from all over the country who seem to, they write long emails about some incident in Ann Arbor or about some song that I wrote about or whatever. So music's been really helpful. People say, you must really have a good memory, and I do have a good memory, but music actually really helps. And to show the interconnectedness of things in Ann Arbor, I'll finish with this. I took a trip in 2024. My wife passed away early that year, and I had promised her I would finish this book. She never gave me a task without a date on it. She said, yeah, I need you to finish this in 2024. I said, we'll get this done. So I'm off writing in California, and I'm stuck on chapter 2, 1810 Covington, our house. I'm writing about our house. I get an email from the editor at Fifth Avenue Press, Emily. She says, I'm Emily, I'm your editor. How you doing on the book? And I said, I'm doing fine. And at the end of her email, she says, P.S., I really need you to finish this book. We've got to publish it. By the way, I live at 1810 Covington. She lived in the house. She's writing me from the house I grew up in, and I'm writing about that day. So with that, I sat up. I got to get cracking. You know, this is too weird. I got to finish this chapter. And so thank you to Emily. And
I just came from your house. I'm Emily's mother.
Oh.
I was babysitting my grandson. I just came from 1810 Covington
Yeah.
to come
Yeah. So what's the baby's room? What room does the baby have?
Yes, I think it's your old den.
The old den.
I asked Emmy, so when you come in the house and you go you go up the stairs
Right.
and to the right, maybe that's not your den.
Yeah.
The baby's nursery is up the stairs, that first
All right.
set of stairs and to the right.
My dad's study, it used to have 3,000 books, and so the kid will be very smart, I'll tell you that. So,
Loaded with books.
all right, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm very glad he told that story because I was going to say something if he didn't. I will say a book that we released out last year, The Northeast Corner by Colby Halloran, and we have it up for sale, also has an interesting house connection in that the house that she grew up in, that she writes about when she's writing about her memoir and her parents growing up in Ann Arbor, they lost the home, someone else purchased it. Many years later, she was walking by the house and chatted with the current owner, and then she married him. So now she lives in her childhood home. So there's interesting back-to-back home poetic corrections. Okay, so our next speaker is our other memoir that we released in 2025, Phoenix Girl, How a Fat Asian with Bipolar Found Love by Michelle Yang. After Michelle immigrates to the U.S. from the tight-knit ethnic Chinese enclave in Incheon, South Korea, she must adapt quickly to survive. With a dominant, impulsive father in charge who protects the family from everyone but himself, and a mother who never finds her power, Michelle craves safety and security. Like tumbleweeds, Michelle and her family bump across the country in a Ford Dixie van before settling in Phoenix, Arizona. Working at their family-owned Chinese takeout restaurant by age 12, Michelle drowns in pressures beyond her age. Ultimately, Michelle finds love, not only the romantic kind, but an enduring self-love, which allows her to heal, never give up, and thrive while successfully managing what later becomes a bipolar 1 diagnosis. Please welcome Michelle Yang.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, despite the snow, like everyone has said. My book actually came out 6 months ago, so it's almost to the date. So it's a wonderful celebration to be here. And of course, I want to thank Fifth Avenue Press and Aaron for just being so supportive. And Nate, who I'm meeting for the first time today, he did an amazing job. He does the layout and all the book design. Oops, how do I go back? There we go. And I wanted to thank Eli as well, because this book is a love letter to libraries, among so many other things. And yeah, I just could not have done it without them, of course. They have been endlessly supportive. My memoir, Phoenix Girl, is really encapsulated well by the subtitle, How a Fat Asian with Bipolar Found Love. And I know it startles a lot of people. It's my story of how I immigrated to the U.S. as an ethnic Chinese kid from Chinatown in South Korea, as Aaron said. And today is a time when immigrants are under attack. And so I wanted to focus today's reading on that. You know, much of my book embodies the common struggles of most working class immigrant families like my own. I was a restaurant kid, and it also highlights my journey as a fat female and my struggles with my body image and, of course, with my mental health and being diagnosed later with bipolar disorder. But as the title suggests, my story has a happy ending, and it's important to me that it did have this happy ending because I'm fighting to change the narrative on mental health. So my family immigrated in 1990 with documentation after waiting for 10 years for our paperwork to be approved. My family had the privilege, the connection, and money to wait 10 years. Others who are fleeing hunger, poverty, war, and violence are not so lucky. Today, as an immigrant American, I would like to use my time to stand up for immigrant rights, to attest again how we are a country of immigrants, powered by immigrants, and that immigrants make America great, by sharing an excerpt from my book, where I learned just how American I am. So if anybody wants to follow along, it's chapter 28, It's called 9/11. And at this part, I'm age 20, and it's in Beijing, China. I arrive in Beijing in late August. The massive city is hard to wrap my head around. The students in my program are transported by a small bus from the airport to the international student dorm. To my surprise, my home for the next several months is more like a dual occupancy hotel room with daily cleaning service than an actual dorm room where local students stay, packed 7 to a room. My new classmates are mostly from Stanford, Vanderbilt, and other fancy private liberal arts schools. Only a few are from giant public universities like mine. No one cares that I'm a Flynn scholar, and I don't mention it, of course, so most of my new peers assume I am an unremarkable state school student. Because my Mandarin is good enough to pass for a native speaker in Beijing, whenever I ask for directions, no matter how polite or deferential my manners, I'm always met with open hostility instead of the kind patience offered my white or even Korean American classmates. Like stereotypical New Yorkers, Beijing locals have no moment to spare for me. I look and sound Chinese enough, I should know how to figure out my own way instead of interrupting their day. Mere weeks after our arrival, local students trample through our international dorm hallways late at night, pounding on each door. "Turn on your TVs," they shout, echoing down the hall. I'm startled by the interruption of what had been a quiet night. "What's going on?" I ask. We all ask the same question. Somehow, I wander into a classmate's dorm room where several students gather around a small television. We huddle together on the edge of 2 beds and watch in shock as replays of planes crashing into the Twin Towers is displayed on the screen. Is this real? In the coming days, we are told that the home we'd left behind will never be the same again. America will never be the same. What does this mean? How can such a big change happen while I am away? What will it take? What will it be like when I go back home? The hostility from locals, the cold shoulder from many of my program mates, and the stress wears me down. Homesickness for Arizona sinks in also. I miss having people I can relax around. I struggle to close the distance with other students in the program. I don't know why. Are people spreading rumors about me? They all hate me, don't they? I become hypervigilant. For our semester end final writing assignment, students can choose any topic they want, but it requires approval from the program director. Fascinated by the portraits of Chairman Mao, which hang inside taxis and restaurants, in place of a Buddha or a Christian cross, perhaps, for protection and prosperity, I decide to research the deification of the political leader. I am proud to have thought of such a clever topic. I can't wait to interview people about it and get started, but I'm surprised when our normally kind and sweet program director asks to meet me in her small office. "You can't write about this," she says, with an ashen face and darkened eyes. "Why, Dr. Huang? It could be so interesting. I can't wait to talk to people about their beliefs." Her eyes begin to water. The lines of fatigue, frustration, and age on her face, which I hadn't noticed before, emerge. "The people are not ready," she says. She does not want to fight any longer. I feel ashamed, and I don't know why. The rejection burns. My American privilege, the naive assumption that I can pursue any intellectual curiosity, is one I have long taken for granted. My privilege and foreignness are on full display, and I have never felt more American. I procrastinate on selecting another topic as long as I can. And when I can't put it off anymore, I choose what I think is a safe, easy, and crowd-pleasing topic. Yeah, my grandfather. I write the paper on my family history, about how Yeye is a self-made man who left northern China, penniless and illiterate, to start anew in Korea. This tale of his entrepreneurial spirit and perseverance, of how he worked tirelessly to build a small empire, never failed to garner positive reactions in the US. I had won the Flynn Scholarship in part thanks to this similar essay in English. So when my designated Chinese language partner, a local PhD student in political science at the university, who until then I believed to be my friend, reviews my work, she grimaces. "Your yeye," she said, spits with a sneer. "He was a landlord." Landlords are a class of people who were systematically executed during the Communist Revolution. She laughs to show me how unimpressed she is with my yeye. In her eyes, yeye was a traitor, a deserter. Blindsided, I recoil. I failed again. Even after a drastic change in subject, trying to write something uncontroversial, I am colliding headfirst into a China that does not celebrate my thinking, does not understand or embrace me, no more than I could celebrate, understand, or embrace it without reservations. The rejection from my ancestral land ruptures my already murky identity. Not Korean, not quite Taiwanese, not this kind of Chinese. As an ethnic Chinese person who had always lived outside the country, I had hoped to reclaim a piece of my heritage here. Instead, I lose my tenuous grasp, more alienated than ever. My indelible Asian American identity reinforces itself. I ache for my adopted home country of immigrants. Thank you.
I want to give a shout out that when you go upstairs and buy a copy of this book, you will get a lovely bookmark with the cover on it and hand put on, what are we calling that? Yarn, whatever, the little tassel. So anyway, it's lovely. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so our final book today is the one novel that we had come out in 2025, Music for Evenings by Gerald Ciclavan. Music for Evenings is a set of 3 long stories that do not constitute a unified thematic art or conventional plot line. Extremely minimal links exist between the 3 stories, which are otherwise independent of one another. Borderline, a 3-part narrative with fantastical and heavily satirical elements, begins and ends the book. Charlie, inserted between parts 1 and 2 of Borderline, traces the career of a gifted young sculptor whose professional fortunes flourish even as his personal life deteriorates. Rose and Nicole, which precedes both 3 of Borderline, follows the lives of 2-woman family. Nicole, the mother, is a gifted semi-professional watercolorist, and her daughter Rose, a professional flute virtuoso. I think we've got that. Okay, please give a warm welcome to Gerald Ciclavan.
Thanks. I've been struggling with a cough, so I hope this doesn't turn into a performance where I sit here and cough for 10 minutes. Basically, Aaron just read what I would have said about the book myself. The one thing that I had here to add was I'm fond of saying that the main character in everything I write is the English language. Plot and character development are not, for me, the main attraction. They are simply the delivery system for somersaulting linguistic manipulations. I guess that's an example of one. So this is the beginning of Borderline. And I've read that there's a lot of opinion lately that characters in fiction should be likable. Well, my narrator, Keith, is not likable. Look at him over there. No, don't look. Don't give him the satisfaction. He thinks he's so great. Well, okay, he is the one with all the raw power around here, the one with the most devastating powers. Big deal. I've got his number and he knows it. If I wasn't family, I'd have been among the first batch of degenerates that he executed after Dad turned the galaxies over to him. I should say among the first that he'd had executed. He never personally lifted a finger. Too much effort. He would have had a couple of his lackeys drag me away somewhere and off me like any other enemy of the state, and he would have rewarded them with an extra dose or two of Cygasm. Some consider him godlike, but those mouth breathers have never seen that jerk try to pop a wheelie on his vintage Schwinn Stingray. What a turkey. My girlfriend, Pearl, is fed up with the way I constantly gripe about him. Just the other day she said, "You know, he's the monocrat whether you like it or not." I hate the reverential tone in her voice whenever she talks about him. Just to rub it in, she added, "Omnipotent and omniscient." Sneering, I snapped back, "Yeah, he's omniscient and he knows it." She glared at me and walked away. Haven't seen her since. Not even a phone call or a text. Okay, we can probably use a timeout. No biggie, no problemo. This is a few sections on. When I was a kid, my parents regarded me with blunt, scarcely concealed disappointment. The old man never even bothered to mask his displeasure. Per one of his jackhammer subtle jokes, when the hospital called to say I'd been born, he asked if the baby was a boy or a girl, and the nurse replied, "It's a loser." "Good one, Dad, you chimp-faced, chortling chum bucket." Mom occasionally feigned sympathy for the disheveled reject of the litter, but she was too busy anxiously clamoring for Dad's approval, or at least a ragged scrap of his attention, to make more than a token effort on my behalf. Dad's bearing, which Mom unconsciously or obsequiously aped, was one of constant, silent judgment, and to him I invariably placed a shabby, distant second to the darling of the household. Unspoken, sure, but the sunken looks on their faces and the peevish quality of their sighs conveyed what they were thinking plainly enough. Why can't you be more like your big brother? Well, maybe I'm second-rate compared to Mr. Perfect. Maybe I don't even warrant a participation trophy, but I'm not a complete dud. I have a few good qualities, plenty of bad ones as well. I'm not too high and mighty to admit it, unlike some people. I may not be the nicest guy around. I know I'm pretty surly with a couple drinks in me, and sometimes I'm downright ornery. But what about him? His behavior is thoroughly abhorrent. I mean, look at how he treats his slaves, or women, both of which come to the same thing in the Bluebeard's castle of his stone-gray mind. Now, this is a section from part 1 of Charlie, and it's not all that close to the beginning, but it's fairly close to the beginning. They've gone to Lake Michigan, Charlie and his partner. The lake worked its usual magic. Charlie's outlook brightened, he crept back to life, and we took up our routine of long morning walks, voluptuous afternoons, and deep nocturnal talks under the stars. It had been several weeks since he'd touched a drink, but he got plastered the night before we took off for home. He'd begun to freak out about whether he was equal to the technical demands of the piece as he envisioned it. I was disappointed, feeble word, that he'd backslid into drunkenness, and dismayed by the emergence of a perplexing new pattern. Though his prospects were auspicious, he'd responded by plunging into a wilderness of anxiety. It was baffling to me, but I am practical and even-tempered, qualities that stand in marked contrast to Charlie's frightfully mercurial nature. He surely knew that he'd been producing work of the highest caliber, but he'd become subject to crushing episodes of self-doubt, and as his career gained momentum, his confidence periodically crumbled under the pressure to perform. I tried my best to allay his apprehensions, to ensure him that people like Suzanne and Richard had no time for posers or dilettantes. Their interests signaled that he was more than merely capable and was, in fact, creating masterful, inspired, original art. The night was serene and cool, the immense lake so inconceivably still that a few of the brightest stars were mirrored on its surface. Snuggling closer, I told him that I loved him and believed in him, as did a rapidly expanding group of admirers. He calmed down a bit and allowed that I'd made some good points. We watched the sky wordlessly for a long time. I was on the verge of dozing off when he said something about a brilliant light behind it all. A light behind what? It's like the stars are tiny holes in the night, in the fabric of the night, and they let in a little of the radiance that's blazing behind all the darkness. His words evanesced into the enveloping silence. By and by, a gentle breath of air drifted on shore, building steadily until it was an insistent breeze that set the lake busily into motion. A damp chill wafted in and blanketed the beach, prompting our retreat to the warm house. I had to steady Charlie a few times when he teetered on the steps. Overnight, the wind intensified to an obstinate roar. In the morning, as we prepared to leave, huge waves were pounding the beach with explosive, inexorable force. And this is the beginning of Rose and Nicole. I want to add, too, these are very interconnected stories. It's not really a novel. It's a set of 3 stories that have a tiny bit of overlap. Nicole and her brother William were born on May 24th, 1928 in Lurig, Ohio. Not long afterward, their parents moved to a tiny home built by the twins' father, George, in an obscure settlement about 4 miles from Lurig. Situated in Athens County, it was merely a sprinkling of homes, a wooden Baptist church, and a small cemetery, all clustered near State Route 56. George McClare's parents had emigrated from Ireland during the final decade of the 19th century. He'd been a miner from the age of 14 and had toiled in that dingy subterranean occupation for 19 years. The southeast corner of Ohio was an especially brutal locale in which to mine coal, as the veins were at most 4 or 5 feet thick, obliging the workers to crouch or to remain on their knees. Eventually, the mining firms, which paid their essentially captive employees and company money, moved on to more profitable environs, and George went to work for the County Road Commission. In the summer of 1927, he'd married Rosa Virgine Beckler. Like her 2 firstborn children, Rosa was a twin. She and her brother, Ralph Virgil, had been born in Lurig on March 15, 1909. Their mother, after whom Rosa was named, died in childbirth, and their grief-ravaged father, another man named George, gave the children up. He felt incapable of caring unaided for 2 newborns, not least because he knew he would forever fault them for the death of his wife. He was aware that it was unjust to hold the innocent children responsible, but his helpless heart had been broken, and he could not bear to be around them. Ralph went to the Jones family, and his sister was taken in by the Becklers. When Rosa was still a small girl, her adoptive mother, Elma, became a young widow. Her husband, Samuel, worked in a remote area far from Lurig, where the family could not viably set down roots. No trains ran between the 2 locations, and the price of an automobile lay well beyond the Becklers' paltry means. Obliged to live away from his wife and daughter, he rented a room in a boarding house. One night in July 1916, it caught fire. Samuel was safely out of the building when he realized that a valuable silver cup he kept as a memento of home had been left inside. Determined to rescue it, he ran back into the flame-engulfed house and into eternity. Thank you. That story in particular is a generational thing. It covers 4 generations, and it ends up in a very different place than where it started. Thank you.